should one go for investment through mutual funds or should one go for investment through individual stock picking? This is one of the basic questions which every beginner investor would have in his mind. Even I had the same question when I started my investing journey since 2009. So since 2009, I started my investing journeys from investment through mutual funds. And I decided for myself that I would also give time to understand, analyze stocks, study, do self-development on how to pick individual stocks and do investments into individual stocks. And during this time, I came across various advantages that the mutual fund will have over the individual stock picking and the disadvantages as well. So the disadvantages of the mutual fund weighs much more than the disadvantages of the individual stock picking. But however, we have to compare apple to apple, right? Now, as we know, the mutual fund is managed by a fund manager. And when it comes to individual stock picking, it is managed by the individual himself who is the fund manager. If the knowledge and the self-development of both these are of comparable nature, then the individual stock picker can be the same fund manager who picks stocks. So who would earn a better return then? If the fund manager manages his own set of portfolio, who would you think does better? The fund manager who is managing the mutual fund or the fund manager who is managing his own portfolio? I know you know the answer, right? So that was the first question I asked myself, and then I decided I have to study individual stock picking to gain advantage over the mutual fund. Okay, let's see what are the advantages and disadvantages nevertheless. So when it came to mutual fund, as we all know, it's a pooled money, it's a sourced money from all investors, and out of this sourced money, the fund manager then decides where to diversify these funds into various stocks. And when it comes to individual stock picker, he has limited fund based on his salary or asset income. Based on that limited income, he analyzes a certain set of stocks and decides his investment strategy. So the role is same. The objective as well is the same. I have to grow wealth. I have to appreciate the capital invested. So even the fund manager thinks likewise like the individual stock picker. So now when it comes to diversification of the portfolio, the mutual fund manager has a greater advantage of diversification. But however, it is his choice. But because of a large sum of capital available, he can diversify to a huge set of portfolio, depending on how many companies are really worthwhile at that particular point of time which he is investing. And when it comes to individual stock picking, the individual investor, due to his limited time capacity, he can only analyze maybe around 20 to 30 stocks. And out of these 20 to 30 stocks, he can filter out some stocks and decide which stocks he should go ahead with. Obviously, it is incomparable that certain individual investors might outflow even the fund manager, but it depends on whether he has done his thorough analysis or not. So even the individual investor can have a big diversification compared to a mutual fund portfolio. So that is one of the aspects. The second aspect is the expense ratio. The mutual fund has various fees which it charges on the investment. So one foremost expense is the expense ratio. The second is the transaction amount which it charges, and the third is the exit load. Recently, a lot of mutual fund houses are not charging entry load. I guess SEBI has barred to charge the entry load, but however, transaction fee is charged, and this transaction fee is for a transaction of more than 10,000 rupees, which is about 100 to 150 based on whether you're a first investor or a continued investor. And then you have a exit load. Depending on the time period of the mutual fund, it will be written in the clause. If it is within that time period, if you're trying to exit the mutual fund, then it will charge you heavily. So take care of the penalty. And when it comes to individual stock picker, well, he only has to abide with the brokerage fees as well as the STT cost. And this typically is in the range of 0.5% for the buying, and when you have to sell, again 0.5. So overall, it's about 1%. Of course, there are certain cases wherein each transaction would cost you only 20 rupees irrespective of the size of the transaction for some particular trading platforms. So you can choose your trading platform wisely when it comes to individual investment. But however, when it comes to mutual fund, the investor doesn't have much choice but to abide with the transaction fee as well as the exit load. So the third aspect which I want to talk to you about is crucial, because when the ups come in the market and the market is trading at a very high P or a very high price, the fund house manager, what he does with the capital pool that time, he might receive lump sum that time, he might receive a lot of SIP contributions. So what he has to do, he has no choice but to go ahead and select some investment which he needs to diversify. He could end up doing a mistake as well. He could end up doing an investment wherein the intrinsic value of the company and the fair price is higher than the intrinsic value. But the individual investor, when he sees a high in the market, and he's an experienced investor, of course, so he needs to decide whether when it's high, should he go and invest into the same share which he already has, or should he go for something else which is available at a cheaper price compared to its intrinsic value. So that is the choice which the individual investor has compared to the fund manager of the mutual fund. And then when it comes to the low, when the market drips down, the individual investor has much more control compared to the fund house manager. Because the fund house manager now has to rely on all those investors' capacity to keep the capital there with him or to remove the capital out. You know the herd mentality, right? And more likely than not, a lot of investors, because they don't know about investing in the first place, that is the reason why they have come to mutual fund houses, they remove capital out of the mutual fund. And that is where the mutual fund suffers the loss compared to the individual investor. The individual investor can do a rupee cost averaging if he is smart enough, right? He can reduce the cost of his investment depending on the gap between the intrinsic value, the cost in which he previously invested, and the current low price which is available today. It's a great opportunity for an individual investor to do a rupee cost averaging if the stock price is lower. Or he could just stay on the sideline, depending on his judgment. So this is the sense of control which the individual investor has. He can decide his own portfolio to give him better returns compared to the mutual fund portfolio. So of course, the individual investor needs to do a same kind of job with the fund manager does. This fund manager, if he was himself an individual investor, he would obviously gain much more than the fund which he is managing. So that was the difference which I would like to share with you in this particular video. So please subscribe if you have liked this video. I will be sharing a lot of videos going forward as well. See you.